The city sparkled in the evening sunlight. Tall glass towers reflected the orange and pink colors of the sky. Among these towers, one building stood taller than the rest, a mansion owned by Faisal, a wealthy Arab billionaire. Faisal was known across the city for his riches, his power, and his pride. He had everything money could buy, from fast cars to luxurious yachts. Yet more than anything, he enjoyed showing that he was superior to others. Inside the mansion, preparations were underway for a grand party. Servants moved quickly, carrying trays of food, arranging flowers, and polishing the golden decorations that filled the hall. The party was not just for celebration. It was also an opportunity for Faisal to show off his wealth and his intelligence. Scholars, businessmen, and important guests were invited. Everyone knew that Faisal liked to challenge people and prove that only the smartest could impress him. Among the staff was a young maid named Noor. She was not rich, and she had no special training, but she had something many people did not: a calm mind and a sharp sense of observation. Noor lived with her mother and younger brother in a small, simple house not far from the city. Her mother often told her, "True treasure is not gold or silver, my daughter. It is knowledge, patience, and honesty." Noor had listened carefully to her mother's words, remembering them every day. As the evening progressed, the mansion filled with laughter and music. Guests admired the decorations and whispered about how wealthy Faisal was. The food was delicious, the music lively, and the golden chandeliers reflected light across the grand hall. But Faisal had something else in mind. He wanted more than admiration. He wanted attention. Suddenly, Faisal stood at the top of the grand staircase, raising his hands to quiet the crowd. "Tonight," he said loudly, "I will give a challenge that only the cleverest can solve. Whoever solves my puzzle will receive $100 million. Fail, and you will leave empty-handed." His voice echoed through the hall, full of pride and confidence. The guests murmured among themselves. Some laughed, thinking it was a trick. Others tried to appear smart, whispering ideas to each other. They were all curious and excited. Some scholars even looked a little nervous because they had heard of Faisal's difficult puzzles before. He had a reputation for making problems that only a few could solve. Noor stood quietly at the corner of the hall, holding a tray of drinks. She listened carefully, her dark eyes focused on Faisal. She did not feel fear or shame because she was a maid's daughter. Instead, she felt a quiet curiosity. Her heart beat a little faster. Could she really solve a puzzle meant for the cleverest minds in the city? She remembered her mother's advice. Even if others think you are small or ordinary, do not underestimate yourself. Wisdom comes to those who observe carefully and think calmly. The crowd grew louder as Faisal called for the golden box. He brought it out slowly, placing it on a pedestal in the center of the room. The box was beautiful, made of shining gold with strange symbols engraved on its surface. Tiny locks glimmered in the light. "This," Faisal said, pointing to the box, "is no ordinary puzzle. Many have tried and failed. Some have even given up in frustration, but whoever opens this box will become one of the richest people in the world overnight." The guests leaned closer, whispering among themselves. Some examined the box with their eyes, trying to understand the symbols. Some scholars even touched it, trying to feel its mechanism. Everyone believed that solving it would require knowledge, logic, and perhaps a little luck. Noor moved closer too, quietly, without drawing attention. She studied the symbols and the locks. Unlike the others, she did not feel nervous or desperate. She only thought about the patterns, the shapes, and the possibilities. She remembered how her mother used to solve problems at home by looking at them slowly, step by step. She knew that rushing would not help and overthinking would only confuse her. Faisal noticed her and laughed loudly. "You?" he said, pointing at Noor. "The maid's daughter wants to try? Very well. Come forward and show us your courage. I am curious to see what you can do." The crowd laughed at his words. Some shook their heads, thinking she had no chance. Noor, however, walked calmly toward the box. She did not look at the audience, only at the puzzle. Her hands were steady, her mind clear. As she approached the pedestal, a strange feeling filled the room. Everyone watched silently. It was not just curiosity. There was something about her calm and focused presence that drew attention. Noor did not speak. She only began to study the box carefully, noticing every detail. In that moment, the billionaire, the scholars, and the guests all realized that this young maid's daughter might be different from what they expected. And so, the challenge began. Noor stood in front of the golden box, her eyes carefully following each symbol. The locks were small but precise, and the patterns on the box were strange, unlike anything she had seen before. Most of the guests were whispering, pointing at her as if to say, "How can a maid's daughter solve this?" Scholars scratched their heads, some shaking with frustration, because they had already tried similar puzzles and failed. But Noor remained calm. She did not feel pressure from the crowd or from the words of Faisal, who was watching her with a mixture of surprise and pride. She remembered her mother's words. No matter how complicated a problem seems, if you observe carefully and think clearly, the solution will appear. Do not rush. Pay attention to the smallest details. Noor bent slightly, tracing the engraved lines on the golden box with her fingers. She noticed that the symbols were not random. They repeated in a sequence but with tiny differences. While others had tried to force the locks or guess the answer, Noor decided to think differently. The first lock was shaped like a triangle. She noticed that the triangle pointed toward a small circle on the side. Carefully, she rotated it in her hand, aligning the edges. Click. The first lock opened. A small cheer rose from the crowd, but it was quiet, almost hesitant because no one had expected this. Faisal's eyes widened. He stepped closer, leaning over the crowd to see how she did it. "Impossible," he whispered, though he tried to hide his surprise. Noor smiled faintly to herself. She did not care about the attention. Her mind was focused entirely on the next lock. This one had a pattern that looked like waves. She paused, thinking. "What do waves do?" she asked herself softly. She remembered how, at home, her mother had taught her about water and how small changes could create big effects. She turned the lock slowly, gently pushing it along the correct path. Another click sounded. The second lock opened. The guests were now watching more closely. Some were leaning forward, whispering to each other. Some scholars shook their heads, muttering, "How can she be so calm? How can she understand so quickly?" Even the richest men in the room were surprised. Noor did not notice their amazement. Her mind was quiet like a still lake, observing every detail of the puzzle. Faisal, who had always believed that only money and power could measure intelligence, felt something he had never felt before: respect. He realized that Noor's success did not come from wealth or pride, but from careful thinking and patience. He watched her work, his arms crossed, trying to hide his growing admiration. How can a simple maid's daughter understand what no scholar could? He wondered silently. The third lock was more complicated. It had tiny symbols that looked like stars. Noor noticed a small pattern that repeated every 3 symbols. She remembered the stories her mother told her about patterns in nature, how stars formed constellations and how the simplest observations could reveal hidden truths. She aligned the symbols carefully, moving them step by step. Another click. The third lock opened. The crowd gasped. Some clapped softly while others whispered in disbelief. A few guests exchanged nervous glances, wondering if they had underestimated her. Even some of the wealthy men, who were used to solving business problems and challenges, felt humbled. They realized that intelligence was not about money, fame, or education alone. Sometimes it was about patience, focus, and seeing what others ignored. Faisal could not believe it. He had designed this puzzle to be almost impossible. Many had tried before and failed. Yet here was Noor, a quiet young maid's daughter, opening locks with calm hands and careful thought. He felt a mix of pride and confusion. Pride because she had achieved what seemed impossible, and confusion because it challenged everything he had believed about intelligence and ability. The fourth lock was a small circle with a tiny keyhole. It looked simple, but Noor noticed a shadow pattern near the edge. She realized that the shadow pointed to a symbol on the box that matched the keyhole. Gently, she aligned them and the lock clicked open. The crowd grew louder now. People were whispering her name, amazed by her skill. Some even took out their phones, secretly hoping to remember how she did it. Noor's calmness never changed. She did not look at the applause or the shocked faces. She only focused on the final part of the box. The last lock had the most complex pattern, like a series of connected triangles and circles. She paused, thinking carefully. Her heart beat a little faster, but she did not panic. She knew that rushing could ruin everything. She remembered every small observation she had made so far and combined them with patience. Slowly, she moved the symbols into place. Another click sounded. The last lock opened. Noor gently. After Noor opened the golden box, The crowd remained silent for a few seconds, as if no one could believe what had just happened. Then slowly, whispers started to spread across the room. "Did she really do it?" someone asked. "A maid's daughter solved it," another said, shaking their head in disbelief. Scholars who had tried similar puzzles before looked at each other in amazement. Even the richest men in the hall, who had spent years solving business and strategy problems, seemed humbled by her calm intelligence. Faisal stood frozen for a moment. His pride had been challenged in a way he had never expected. He had believed that wealth, knowledge, and power could measure intelligence. Yet here was Noor, a young maid's daughter, showing that intelligence came from patience, careful observation, and thinking clearly. He could feel his pride faltering, replaced by curiosity and respect. He walked slowly toward her, unable to hide his astonishment. Noor, holding the small velvet pouch and the note from the box, looked up at him calmly. Her dark eyes were steady, showing no fear or arrogance. She had solved the puzzle not to prove herself to the world, but because she had faith in her own ability to think clearly and patiently. She remembered her mother's words, which guided her every action. "Even if others doubt you, trust your mind and your patience. The truth often reveals itself to those who wait." Faisal cleared his throat and spoke, his voice a mixture of disbelief and respect. You have done what no one else could do. You have solved the impossible puzzle." He paused, searching her eyes for some explanation. How did you do it?" Noor smiled faintly and replied, "I did not use force or rush. I looked carefully, noticed patterns, and thought step by step. The solution was always there, hidden in the details. I just needed to be patient." Her answer was simple, but it carried a quiet power. It was not arrogance or pride. It was wisdom, calm and clear. The guests began to clap softly, then louder, impressed by her intelligence and composure. Scholars approached her, curious to learn how she had solved the puzzle. "You must teach us your method," one of them said. "I have studied puzzles for years and never thought of this approach." Noor shook her head politely. "I just pay attention and stay calm. Anyone can do it if they focus," she said simply. Her words inspired the guests. It was not her wealth, dress, or family background that amazed them, but her clear mind and calm determination. Faisal could not hide his fascination. He had spent years creating challenges that would test the smartest people in the city, yet he had underestimated a simple young maid's daughter. He realized that intelligence was not measured by status or money, but by patience, observation, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. For the first time, he felt a sense of humility. Noor carefully placed the pouch on the table. Inside it contained a note with words of wisdom. "True wealth lies in understanding, patience, and seeing what others overlook." The crowd leaned closer to read the message. Some nodded slowly, understanding the lesson behind her success. It was not about money or fame, but about using the mind wisely and staying true to oneself. Faisal finally spoke again. "You do not need this money?" he asked, referring to the promised $100 million. Noor shook her head. "I do not need your money," she said softly. "I only wanted to show that thinking clearly and being patient can solve any problem." Her words were honest and sincere. They carried a message stronger than any treasure in the world. The room was quiet for a moment as everyone absorbed what had happened. The wealthy, the scholars, and the other guests realized that Noor had shown something more valuable than gold. She had demonstrated intelligence, patience, and wisdom. She had challenged pride and shown that success is not about arrogance or power. It is about understanding and staying calm in the face of challenges. Faisal studied her for a long time. He saw the determination in her eyes, the quiet confidence that came from knowing one's own mind. He felt respect growing within him, mixed with curiosity. He realized that he could learn from her, not about puzzles, but about thinking, patience, and humility. For the first time in his life, he felt that someone had opened his mind in a way that no wealth or power ever could. Noor gently returned the golden box to the pedestal, careful not to damage it. She had solved the puzzle, but she did not act as if she had achieved something extraordinary. To her, it was simply a test of patience and careful observation, nothing more. Yet to everyone else, especially Faisal, it was extraordinary. She had shown courage, intelligence, and humility all at once. The guests began to talk excitedly, some still trying to figure out how she had done it. Scholars asked questions. Businessmen wanted to understand her approach, and the crowd slowly realized that Noor's victory was a lesson for all. It was a lesson that intelligence is not measured by wealth, fame, or social status, but by focus, patience, and clear thinking. Faisal stepped back, reflecting on everything he had just witnessed. He had always been proud, confident that no one could surpass him. But now, he understood that humility, patience, and intelligence could come from unexpected places. Noor, the young maid's daughter, had changed the way he thought. She had shown that wisdom and patience could conquer pride, and even the most difficult challenges. After the golden box was opened, the atmosphere in the grand hall changed completely. The music, which had been lively, fell silent in many corners as people stared at Noor. Even the wealthy guests who had come to show off their own cleverness now seemed small and ordinary. Scholars whispered to each other, trying to understand how someone so young, so simple, and so quiet could solve a puzzle that had challenged the brightest minds for years. Noor, however, remained calm. Her focus was not on the crowd, but on the lesson she had learned from her mother about patience and careful thinking. Faisal, the billionaire, walked slowly toward her. His tall frame cast a shadow over the marble floor, but his eyes were fixed on her, full of curiosity and amazement. He had seen many clever people in his life, but none had approached intelligence like Noor. This is incredible," he said, almost to himself. "No one has ever done what you just did." Noor held the small velvet pouch and the note gently in her hands. She felt a strange mix of pride and humility. Pride because she had trusted her own mind, and humility because she knew that many people around her had worked hard and still could not succeed. She remembered her mother's words. "Always use your mind and heart together. Do not think you are greater than others, but do not doubt your own ability either." She spoke quietly. "I only tried to focus and be patient. The solution was always there. I only had to see it clearly." The guests began to murmur excitedly, some stepping closer to observe Noor more carefully. They wanted to understand how she had done it. Scholars asked questions, businessmen whispered their admiration, and even the young children at the party watched with wide eyes. Noor noticed their curiosity but did not become distracted. She answered questions politely, explaining that careful observation and calm thinking often revealed answers that force or speed could not. Faisal, standing near the golden box, finally spoke again, this time addressing the crowd. "I designed this puzzle to challenge the cleverest minds. I never imagined someone like Noor would succeed." He paused, taking a deep breath as if realizing something very important. "She has not only solved the puzzle, but she has taught all of us a lesson about intelligence, patience, and focus." Noor smiled faintly. She did not look for praise, but she understood the lesson that her actions had already given to everyone present. She felt proud not of the applause or attention, but of having trusted her own mind. Her calmness had become her greatest strength. While the guests marveled at her skill, Noor quietly reminded herself of what truly mattered, using knowledge wisely, observing carefully, and remaining patient no matter the challenge. Faisal's eyes followed her every move. He was used to being the most powerful and smartest person in every room, yet now he realized that intelligence came in many forms. It was not only in books or wealth, but also in patience, careful observation, and calm thinking. Noor's quiet approach to the puzzle had made him rethink everything he believed about power and success. Noor placed the note from the box on the table for everyone to see. The words were simple but meaningful. True wealth lies in understanding, patience, and seeing what others overlook. The guests read it carefully, and many nodded slowly, realizing the deeper message. It was not about the money in the pouch, but about the way Noor had approached the challenge. Her mind, her patience, and her calmness had shown them a lesson worth far more than gold. As the evening continued, the guests began asking Noor for advice. They wanted to know how she approached problems, how she remained calm, and how she observed details that others had missed. Noor spoke simply, saying that anyone could solve problems if they focused carefully, stayed patient, and trusted their own mind. She did not boast or claim greatness. She only shared her method with humility, showing that true intelligence is about learning and helping others rather than showing off. Faisal felt a strange respect growing inside him. He had always believed that wealth and pride measured a person's worth, but now he understood that wisdom and patience could surpass money, power, and even pride. He realized that he could learn from Noor, not. The golden box now lay open on the pedestal, its secrets revealed. The small velvet pouch inside caught the light, drawing the attention of every guest. Scholars, businessmen, and other important people leaned closer to see its contents. Their curiosity was mixed with admiration and disbelief. How could a young maid's daughter have solved a puzzle that had challenged so many brilliant minds? The room was silent for a few moments as everyone tried to absorb what had happened. Noor stood calmly beside the box, holding the pouch gently. She felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, not because of the attention, but because she had followed her mind and her mother's advice. Her calmness seemed to grow stronger in the presence of the amazed crowd. She had proven something important, not only to the guests but also to herself. Her mother's words rang in her mind. True wisdom comes from patience, careful observation, and honesty. Faisal approached her slowly, his tall frame casting a shadow over the marble floor. He had always been a proud man, confident that no one could match his intelligence or wealth. Yet as he looked at Noor, he felt a strange mix of respect, surprise, and curiosity. "You have done what no one else could," he said, his voice softer than usual. "No one has ever solved this puzzle, not in all the years I have tried to challenge the brightest minds." Noor smiled faintly, holding the pouch steady. "The solution was there all along," she said quietly. "I only had to notice it and think carefully. I did not rush. I observed, understood the patterns, and stayed calm." Her voice was soft, but her words carried a quiet power. It was not arrogance. It was wisdom expressed through honesty and patience. Faisal could not hide his amazement. He reached for the pouch, but Noor gently held it back. "You promised a reward," she said, "but I do not need money. I wanted to show that careful thinking and patience can solve any problem." The billionaire blinked, unused to hearing such humility from someone in the presence of his wealth. He realized that her words were more valuable than the riches he had offered. Noor opened the pouch carefully. Inside was a small note neatly folded. She held it up for the crowd to see. The note contained words that were simple but profound. True wealth lies in understanding, patience, and seeing what others overlook. The room grew quiet again as everyone read the message. Some nodded slowly, realizing the meaning behind her actions. This was not a lesson about money or power. It was about wisdom and perspective. The guests began to murmur excitedly. Scholars who had spent years studying puzzles were intrigued. Businessmen who had relied on strategy and wealth realized that their methods were not the only way to solve problems. Even the younger guests, children who had come with their parents, watched with wide eyes, inspired by Noor's calm intelligence. They could see that intelligence and patience could achieve what pride and power could not. Faisal stood silently for a moment, staring at the note. He felt a mixture of pride and humility. Pride, because Noor had achieved something remarkable, and humility because he had underestimated her. He had designed the puzzle to be nearly impossible, yet Noor had solved it not with force or knowledge alone, but with observation, patience, and calm thinking. He realized that true intelligence could come from anyone, regardless of wealth, status, or background. Noor returned the note to the pouch and placed it carefully on the table. She did not act as if she had accomplished something extraordinary, even though everyone else thought she had. Her actions were quiet and precise, showing respect for the challenge and for the lesson it represented. Her calm demeanor impressed the crowd even more than her intelligence had. Faisal spoke again, this time addressing the guests. "This young woman has not only solved the puzzle but has taught us a valuable lesson," he said, his voice thoughtful. "Wealth and power are not the measure of intelligence. True intelligence comes from patience, observation, and understanding. Noor has shown us that in the most remarkable way." The guests nodded, some still murmuring in admiration. Scholars approached Noor, asking her to explain her methods. She spoke politely and simply, saying that anyone could solve problems if they focused carefully, observed every detail, and remained patient. She emphasized that rushing or trying to impress others often caused mistakes, while calm thinking could reveal solutions hidden from those who acted hastily. Faisal listened to her words, absorbing their meaning. For the first time in his life, he felt that he could learn from someone who had no wealth or social power. He realized that pride and arrogance could never teach him the lessons that patience, humility, and careful observation could. Noor's success was not only in solving the puzzle, but in showing him a different way of thinking. As the evening continued, Noor remained calm and quiet, answering questions politely and inspiring the guests. The room was filled with admiration for her intelligence, humility, and clarity of thought. She had proven that true strength is not measured by money or status, but by wisdom, patience, and the ability to see clearly. By the end of the night, Faisal stood quietly near her, reflecting on what had happened. He realized that Noor's victory had changed something inside him. She had shown him that intelligence, patience, and humility were more valuable than gold or power, and in doing so, she had taught a lesson that the richest and most powerful people in the city would remember for a long time. The hall was filled with quiet excitement. Noor had solved the impossible puzzle, and the golden box now sat open, its contents revealed. Guests moved carefully around her, whispering to each other about what they had just witnessed. Scholars tried to take mental notes. Businessmen reflected on her calm thinking, and even the children who had been watching from the corners seemed inspired by her intelligence. Noor remained calm, her focus not on the attention but on what her actions had taught her. Faisal stood near her, still absorbing the moment. He had always believed that his wealth, power, and carefully designed challenges were the ultimate measure of intelligence. Yet here was Noor, a young maid's daughter who had proven him wrong. He watched her closely, not with pride but with curiosity. For the first time he wondered how someone with so little in material wealth could possess such wisdom. "You have shown us all something extraordinary," Faisal said, his voice thoughtful. "No one has ever solved this puzzle in my entire life. Scholars, mathematicians, and strategists have all failed. Yet you, a young girl, have succeeded. Tell me, what is your secret?" Noor looked at him calmly, holding the small velvet pouch gently in her hands. "There is no secret," she said softly. "I only observed carefully, stayed patient, and thought clearly. The solution was always there. I did not rush or try to impress anyone. I simply focused on the puzzle itself." Her words were simple, but they carried a quiet strength. It was a kind of wisdom that came from honesty, patience, and self-confidence. Faisal listened, nodding slowly. He felt a strange mixture of humility and admiration. He realized that intelligence was not about wealth, titles, or even education. It was about focus, observation, and clarity of thought. Noor had demonstrated something that all the riches in the world could not buy: patience, wisdom, and calm thinking. Guests began to gather closer, curious about the lessons Noor had learned and the way she had solved the puzzle. Scholars asked questions politely, hoping to understand her approach. Noor answered with simplicity and clarity. "When a problem seems impossible, do not force it. Observe carefully, look at all the details, and stay calm. Often the answer is hidden in the small things that others ignore." The crowd listened attentively, realizing that her words were not just about the puzzle, but about life itself. Her method applied not only to challenges of intelligence but to challenges of character, decision-making, and patience. Noor had not come to impress anyone, but her actions spoke louder than words. She was a reminder that true power came from wisdom and calmness, not from wealth or status. Faisal stepped closer, his curiosity growing. "Your approach is simple, yet no one else thought of it. I have always valued cleverness, but I now see that patience and careful observation are even more important. You have taught me a lesson that I will never forget." His voice carried genuine respect. He had been humbled in a way he had never experienced before. Noor smiled faintly, her calm presence giving him confidence to speak honestly. "Thank you," she said softly. "I only followed what my mother taught me. She said that wisdom is more valuable than gold and patience is stronger than pride. That is what helped me solve the puzzle." Faisal nodded slowly, understanding the depth of her words. He realized that she had not only solved the puzzle, but had also opened his eyes to a new way of thinking. Wealth and power could never teach him what Noor had just demonstrated. Her intelligence came from patience, careful observation, and humility. It was a kind of strength that could change minds and hearts, not just solve challenges. The guests continued to watch, inspired by Noor's calm intelligence. They understood that her success was not about proving herself or gaining wealth. It was about using her mind wisely, remaining focused, and acting with patience. Even the children who had been observing quietly seemed to understand that Noor's lesson was more important than any reward. Faisal finally spoke again, this time addressing the entire room. "Noor has shown us that intelligence is not measured by wealth." The day after the party, news of Noor's achievements spread quickly throughout the city. People spoke about the young maid's daughter who had solved the impossible puzzle created by Faisal, the wealthy billionaire. Scholars discussed her cleverness, Businessmen admired her calm approach, and ordinary people were inspired by her patience and intelligence. Noor did not seek attention, but her actions had already left a mark on everyone who had witnessed them. At home, Noor returned to her simple life. She helped her mother with chores and took care of her younger brother. Life had not changed in wealth or comfort, but she carried a quiet confidence that made her feel stronger. Her mother smiled proudly. "See, my daughter, wisdom and patience are your true treasures. The world will now see it too." Noor nodded, knowing that her mother was right. It was not gold or riches that mattered, but knowledge, patience, and clear thinking. Meanwhile, Faisal could not stop thinking about her. For years, he had measured intelligence through pride, wealth, and success, but Noor had shown him a different kind of power. He realized that intelligence could come from anyone, no matter their background. Her patience, calmness, and focus had taught him more than any of his wealth or achievements ever could. He found himself reflecting on the lessons she had shared, wishing he could adopt some of her approach in his own life. Many guests from the party began seeking Noor's guidance. Scholars who had failed at the puzzle wanted to learn her approach. Businessmen asked how to think clearly in difficult situations, and even children wanted to understand how patience could lead to success. Noor answered everyone politely, never boasting or claiming superiority. "Observe carefully," she said simply. "Think clearly. Be patient. The answers often come to those who do not rush or act with pride." Her words were easy to understand, yet powerful, and people listened attentively. Faisal invited Noor to his office again, not for money but to learn from her. He wanted to understand how she approached problems and solved them with calmness and focus. Noor agreed, seeing an opportunity to help someone who had relied on pride and wealth for so long. She knew that teaching him patience, careful observation, and humility could change him in ways that no wealth or power ever could. In Faisal's office, Noor began to explain her thought process. She showed him how she noticed patterns that others overlooked, how she approached each lock slowly and carefully, and how she remained calm even when the task seemed impossible. Faisal listened carefully, realizing that her method could be applied to many areas of life, not just puzzles. He began to understand that true intelligence was about observation, patience, and careful thinking rather than showing off knowledge or strength. Noor's influence began to grow beyond the puzzle. People in the city started talking about her wisdom. Parents encouraged their children to learn patience and observation. Teachers used her story to show students that cleverness and calm thinking could solve problems. Even adults who had relied on quick decisions and pride in their skills began to reflect on her example. Noor had become more than a solver of puzzles. She had become a teacher and a role model, showing that intelligence and humility could go hand in hand. Faisal continued to meet Noor regularly. Each meeting helped him change in small ways. He learned to listen more, observe carefully, and think before acting. He started to value patience over pride, humility over arrogance, and wisdom over wealth. His advisors noticed the change, and slowly, the way he ran his business and interacted with people began to shift. Noor had not only solved a puzzle for him, she had changed his way of thinking and the way he saw the world. Noor remained humble throughout all this attention. She did not seek fame or praise. Instead, she focused on helping others understand the value of careful thinking and patience. She continued to care for her family, to live simply, and to teach quietly by example. Her actions spoke louder than words, and everyone who saw her could feel the strength of her calm mind. The city began to recognize that Noor's story was not just about solving a puzzle. It was about how patience, wisdom, and careful observation could change people, influence decisions, and teach lessons that even the wealthiest and most powerful could learn. People admired her not for wealth or status, but for her intelligence, humility, and the way she handled challenges with calm confidence. Faisal, once proud and arrogant, had learned a powerful lesson from Noor. He realized that true greatness was not about showing off power or wealth, but about using intelligence wisely, staying patient, and respecting the process. Noor had taught him that even a simple act of calm observation could leave a greater mark on the world than riches or status ever could. Noor continued her life quietly, helping her family, teaching others through her actions, and inspiring everyone she met. She had solved the impossible puzzle, but more importantly, she had shown that intelligence, patience, and humility were the true measures of strength. Her story spread not because of fame or money, but because people saw her wisdom and calmness as something to admire and emulate. Weeks passed since the party, and Noor's story had spread far beyond the walls of Faisal's mansion. People in the city spoke of her intelligence, patience, and humility. Scholars referenced her as an example of calm thinking. Children admired her for her quiet courage, and even adults reflected on how she had solved the impossible puzzle without pride or force. Noor continued her simple life, helping her mother at home and caring for her younger brother. She did not seek recognition, yet her influence was growing steadily. Faisal, the billionaire, invited her to his office once more. This time he did not bring a puzzle. He wanted to learn from her approach to life itself. "Noor," he said as she entered, "you have changed the way I see many things. Your calmness, patience, and careful thinking have taught me more than any teacher, any book, or any amount of money ever could. I want to understand how you approach life and decision-making." Noor smiled softly. "I do not have special knowledge," she said. "I only try to notice things carefully, think before acting, and remain patient. Most people rush or act because they feel pressure. If you stop and observe, you often find the answer without forcing it." Her words were simple, but they carried deep meaning. Faisal listened intently, realizing that she was teaching him a way to live wisely, not just solve puzzles. In the following days, Faisal began to apply Noor's lessons. He listened more to his advisors, observed situations carefully before making decisions, and allowed patience to guide him instead of pride or impulse. He found that even in business, calm thinking brought better results than haste. His employees noticed a change in him, and they respected him more than ever, not just for his wealth, but for his thoughtful approach. Noor continued to visit Faisal, not as a servant or pupil, but as a teacher in her own way. She encouraged him to ask questions, reflect on choices, and consider the consequences of actions. Faisal often marveled at how someone so young and without wealth could have such influence. He realized that intelligence and wisdom are not about status, money, or power. They are about patience, observation, and humility. News of Noor's wisdom reached the city schools. Teachers used her story to inspire students, showing that careful thinking and patience could solve even the most difficult problems. Parents encouraged their children to pay attention and observe details, reminding them that rushing often leads to mistakes. Noor had become more than a girl who solved a puzzle. She was now a symbol of intelligence, humility, and calm decision-making. Even the wealthy and powerful began to reflect on her lessons. Business leaders who once valued pride and quick decisions started to see the benefit of patience and careful observation. Scholars studied her methods, trying to understand how a simple, calm approach could succeed where complicated thinking had failed. Noor's quiet influence was changing the mindset of the city, teaching people that wisdom is stronger than wealth and patience stronger than pride. At home, Noor remained humble. She helped her mother clean the house, cooked meals, and cared for her brother's schoolwork. Her life had not changed in comfort or luxury, but her confidence had grown. She knew that her strength came from her mind and her patience, not from recognition or wealth. Her mother often reminded her, "True wealth lies in wisdom, patience, and understanding. You have shown the world this, my daughter." Noor smiled, knowing that her mother's words had guided her every step. Faisal visited Noor's home one afternoon. He wanted to thank her personally for the lessons she had shared, not with money but with guidance. He observed how she helped her family, noting her calm, patient, and thoughtful manner. He realized that these were the true signs of intelligence and strength. "Noor," he said, "you have taught me more about life than I could ever learn from books or money. Your calm mind and careful thinking have changed me." Noor looked at him with quiet confidence. "I only shared what I have learned from my mother," she said. "Patience, observation, and honesty are the keys to understanding. Anyone can use them to face challenges." Faisal nodded, feeling deeply grateful. He realized that he had gained something far more valuable than wealth or pride. He had gained wisdom and a new way of seeing the world. As the days passed, Noor's story continued to inspire people across the city. She remained humble and quiet, yet her actions